The Radical Awareness Podcast
with Nicole and John Allen. And welcome. In this episode, we are talking to the inspiring and fascinating man, Scott Gazzoli. He's the host of another podcast called Causing the Effect. And he's a managing director with a big organization which is called Quest Organization, a boutique advisory firm that caters to the needs of high net worth individuals and families. Scott prides himself on his ability to create solutions and build relationships with his clients. He's also a stand-up comedian by night. He lives, works, and podcasts from Brooklyn, New York. And his podcast is all about being your true self. He considers that one of the biggest gifts we can give ourselves. It's a podcast focused on the true exploration of mind and body on this journey to becoming your true self. And he surely is a fascinating man to talk to, has gone through a lot in his life and his journey towards awareness. And that is, of course, the topic that we are most interested in and discuss with him. Just one little caveat on this episode. There's a few technical difficulties with the recording system, so there's a few little glitches along the way. It sounds like I'm underwater vibe going on for some of the moments when I'm speaking, then apologies for that. Yes, but I don't talk that much, so it's not something you have to worry about too much. We hand it over to Scott in just a moment, but for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Radical Awareness Podcast. We're very excited today to have a very special guest and to be going international for the first time, all the way to New York.
It's like the coolest place.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel a little bit like,
I'm thinking the opposite. New Zealand's the coolest place. So this is fun. That's
oh my God.
Thank you guys for having me. Seriously, happy to be here.
Different kind of cool though, eh? Is New York cool and New Zealand cool? Such different coolness.
Dude, the coolest to me would be go sit in Hobbiton for a month and just being left alone. So trust, I'm with you guys, man. I'm gonna come there one day. So I'll have to.
All right, Scott has a podcast called Causing the Effect. It's got 180 odd episodes on mind and body, health and wellness, spirituality, philosophy. There's even some stuff on mythology and archetypes, some great episodes on authenticity and consciousness. You've covered a lot of topics over 180 episodes.
And you say some great stuff about awareness.
Yeah.
And we are so into awareness being like the key of everything, the gem that if you can cultivate awareness, you change the world. And you have said some things that I'm like, damn, who's that guy? What's he saying?
Yes, that I'm with you guys. That's why we're on the same page. It's like the first step in any question or any touch base, it like comes back to awareness, not only awareness, self-awareness. And that's really where my journey started. So if you saw me in my 20s, you would be like, who is this maniac? I was like the typical Italian kid from Brooklyn. We're getting the women, we're doing drugs, all this good stuff. And I kept chasing pleasures. Quickly realized that is not the answer. It's like trying to, quench an unsustainable thirst. So I started leaning towards spirituality when I was like 28, 29. I went through a divorce. I went through some pretty heavy stuff. Let's start back. I will start even farther back so people can get the story.
Tell us your story.
I was going to tell them before, but like, just so everybody knows, this is not bullshit. This is like my life. And like, I just always embarrassed to say it because like, it's such a ridiculous thing. So growing up, and this is funny because this is my comedy. This is my 10 minutes of my comedy bit too. So it's like therapy for me. So I knew my father till I was 6 years old. Then he disappeared. Didn't know what happened to him. Didn't know where he went. My father went into the witness protection program. Wow. So you guys are familiar with that. It means that goes to the middle of whatever, changes his name. So this motherfucker leaves me with my name, Scott Gazzoli, leaves me. I never knew the whole story until 2 years ago when my grandfather told me this whole thing. So my grandfather got out of jail. I never met him before. First time we met him, he's like, Scott, do you know what happened? I said, no, I don't know the story. Please tell me. So he said, your father put me in jail for 20 years. So my father and his father were the first RICO case. And I'll send you guys it's the first ever RICO out to the appellate court, the judicial court, all this stuff. And he sent it to me because my grandfather was like, I know this a lot. Here's the court. You'll see it mentions my name, but not your father's, because he was, obviously put away. So that was how, life started from 6 to 15. So I was always I think it leaves a lot of uncertainty, and that's probably where, it's crazy. And like, there's going to be a movie. I'm going to have like Ryan Gosling play me. It's going to be wonderful. Yeah. That's the whole thing. But starting off life that way, I think it leaves you a little bit, when you don't have a father figure, it's just like, you're kind of, I think no matter how much I was surrounded by great guys, you just have that confidence issue, that self-worth. Yeah. Mixed with a mother who, if I brought home a 99, my mother would say, why don't you get 100? So we had very high standards that were almost like ridiculous. And I'm happy to say I had 105 average, but all this stuff it puts a lot of pressure. So all I wanted to do in my 20s was like make my mother happy. That was like the goal. I'm a mama's boy. I was like, what did my mother want? Have a big time job, make some money, marry an Italian girl from Brooklyn, and build a house in Brooklyn. I did that by 27. Making all this money in a hedge fund, all this cool stuff. It sounded good on paper. And I get there and I go, this just doesn't feel right. Like it really just feels off. But let me, maybe I'm not mature enough, or I'm not this or that. And for people who don't know, working in a hedge fund in New York City is horrible to me. You're doing Excel spreadsheets from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Whoa. And then you're probably like working late. 12 hours of just doing Excel, and it was not good. So what happened was I started getting really sick, like physically. I got ulcers. They're called peptic ulcers, which are ulcers called from stress. And I said, what the hell is going on? I don't know what to do. I need like something to kind of mend this whole thing. My cousin, who's one of these enlightened cats, spent 15 years in Thailand. He said, listen, doctor's going to give you this. I think you need to calm your mind down a little bit. Here's a book. It was called, the first book I ever read, Mindfulness in Plain English, which was written by, I don't even know the guy, but some Indian dude. It was like one of these books that blew my mind. I was like, wow, I could not sit still for 30 seconds. And that was when I was 25 or 26 is like when all of this started. So, so I've been on this journey for a little bit now, 5 or 6 years. Once I went through a divorce, and I was living with somebody who nothing was bad. There was nothing really terrible about it. It was just something that we didn't fit. She was more than an old school Italian style woman who's like, what's all this stuff into? Why do you have to meditate? Why do you have to go to the gym? Now, whatever. So now I start, I was growing up 270, 280 pounds, which is about 100 pounds ago. So once I started realizing like you could change your physical world, like everything just started kind of run through. Because in my family, it was like, we're old school Italians. Everybody just we like to eat pasta on Sundays, and that's the way we are. There's no way to change your body. I said, no, that's not really true. Let me see what I can do. So I'm on these fitness nuts. I'm in the gym 2 hours a day, all this stuff. So the way I work at it today is you really have to work on your mind, body, and your spirit. So every day I wake up 3:30 a.m., do about an hour and a half of mental work, which for me, it starts off with pranayama, breath work, followed by 45 minutes to an hour meditation. Nowadays, I'm really focused on Tibetan Buddhism. That's really kind of where I've, and I could, more than happy to talk to you guys about that. But I really felt like when you start doing this stuff, I think I started on like personal development, self-help, and that's cool. It's good for rah-rah and Tony Robbins. And I don't knock that, but I think there's two sides of this puzzle. There's the puzzle of doing, and then the puzzle of being. Me being a kid from New York and quick talker, doing is really not an issue. I set goals, 90 days, we will hit those. I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about being still and being able to enjoy it. And that's what I realized I wasn't able to do. So I really like, my meditation comes before my gym now. And I've seen like, you spend 3 hours in the gym and now you spend 2, and everything goes more towards the mental practices. So about an hour and a half of the mental work, then to the gym. So you hit the mind, you hit the body. And then I got Marcus Aurelius Meditations next to me. I tried to stay on top of like being as wise and humble as possible, because those are things I try to work on. Now mix in a little bit of Carl Jung, mix in a little bit of Nietzsche or Freud. All this stuff is like, I'm just obsessed with it. So that's what my podcast is focused on. It really is like an expression of myself. So if you guys saw, like you guys were showing the archetype, I was really on my Carl Jung kick. We were doing a lot of dream work. I was, it's just a lot of stuff. Nowadays, I'm really into the Tibetan Buddhism. And it's just, I love this journey and I love talking about it. It's like the one thing in my life that I can just it just comes effortlessly. And I can just do this. Like after this, I'm going to sit in the bath. I'm going to read all my books. I'm like, this is it. So I've always had things that felt a little too superficial, and it's nice to like I feel like this is one of the things, and even podcasting has become like, this is me being the realest version of myself. And that's what I want the podcast to happen to all my viewers too. So that's the, there you go. I told you it was going to be a long one. So,
I mean, it would, okay. My first question is, but have you seen your dad again?
Yes. So I've seen him once or twice, and I try to, like, I think people think you need to reconcile with your father. We've reconciled in a way, but he's like the exact opposite of me. He's still stuck in like a 25-year-old body. He lives in Las Vegas now, gambling and having a good time. And there's no, to be honest, it's become like I'm the father and he's the son. So he's like, how do I stop drinking? How do I stop all this stuff? So we see each other, and we could talk about all this. Nobody's going to kill anybody. We're all safe. Nobody's going to whack me or anything like that. Those are my father. When I was growing up, you would walk into the warehouse. So the warehouse, they were selling coffee. It was not coffee, it was cocaine. So they got pinched by whatever, and they read it on the Colombian. So it was never like a super, it's a serious thing, but it was never like, I don't like, if it was that bad, I would have had to go and other people would have to go. So he's not in that much trouble now. So I see him, but it's I don't like him too much, to be honest with you. I'm learning to be less judgmental. Like, that's my issue, right? A little bit of anger from, the angry kid, the usual stuff. So I'm trying to be more compassionate, a little bit more judgmental. So I didn't talk to him, to be honest with you, for the last 6 years until last week when we spoke for the first time. And he was hysterical crying. I'm so proud of you. I heard your podcast, all this stuff. So I'm trying. Yeah. So if you're listening to that, I'm trying with you, but we're just on different. Yeah. Cause I was in Vegas 3 years ago. And like, if I go, like, he'll know, like, that's the Gazzoli name in Vegas. We are big gamblers and all this stuff. So he knew I was there, and I was on my spiritual kick.
Are you doing stand up in Vegas?
No. So stand-up's been going on for 2 years. I was just going just to have a good time on it. So single, I was newly, divorced. I'm gonna have a good time. But it was funny because my dad's like, I was reading Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza. So I had like a bunch of books on me, and we had like a host, and I was giving everybody the books. We were talking about it. And I guess that left an impression with these guys, because these guys told my dad. So they're like, your son like was on the spiritual kick, and that's the first time we reached out. So that was 3 years ago. And now, like, that was the first time I actually on FaceTime spoke with him a couple weeks ago.
Amazing.
Incredible. What a story. And amazing. There's something really beautiful in the fact that we talk about intergenerational trauma and just the lines coming down, and then what you've been so drawn to. But the fact that your path is then crossed back with his, and he's asking questions, is such a beautiful thing as well, right? Of how it kind of comes back around and connects, and there is this healing vortex, or opportunity of a healing vortex, let's say.
We're trying. And it's really fun. Like, my sister is a detective in the NYPD. So like, it's like, we're all like all different levels here. And we do
feeling
have
every single part of it.
Yeah, it's like a little movie going on. And we do have, I'm trying my best to be complete and be the best version, but we do have, I think that's part of why I don't speak to my dad. It's like, we do have, the first time I saw him after all that stuff happened, I was 13 years old. And I remember like it was yesterday. So they have these big casinos in New Jersey. So, my dad would, that's what me and my dad did for bonding, was gamble. And not the best thing. Like, usually guys are playing baseballs. Usually you're doing something normal. And it's like, my dad would gamble. I'm talking about gambling, So this is what happened. The new casino opened up. I was 13 years old. We walk in. Gambling, you have to be 21 in America. And they walk in, they say, your son can't sit here. He's 13. Like, you're not allowed. And my dad said, well, I have $500,000 to gamble with. I'm either gambling here or gambling at another casino. So they always let me sit, because my dad was the big whale. Wow. So being around that, it rubbed off on me in not the best way. And, we got stories about that. And even like, it's funny that we're talking about this, because last month, gambling became legal in New York. So it's still something I'm still, because now I'm having it on the phone to gamble. It's like, it's not a good thing for me. So I'm still playing around with it, but it's all works in progress here. But yes, it's all like, I think growing up, you keep looking for the father figure. And I was so, as I went through the whole thing, I'm like, I not that I knock my cousins, just everybody's a little bit different than me, being construction guys or firemen or New Yorkers. Like, I always had the goal, like, I'm walking money. Like, this is the way I think. Like, I always wanted to make like $1,000 an hour. Like, that's what I thought in my head. And now I'm paid $2,000 an hour by my clients. So it's like, it all works. But I just knew, I said, instead of like looking for the father figure, mimicking somebody, I'm just going to go out there and like be myself, and try to incorporate. I said, once I turn 30, I'm gonna tackle my biggest fear, which was stage fright, and then I'm gonna start the podcast. So that was about 2.5 years ago, and here we are. And it's like, you know, that's the mythology stuff, the having those archetypes within you. Like, you know, I always use that that phrase of like going after, you know, I feel like I was running away from stage fright my whole life. So I lost out on opportunities at work. I lost out. I was in high school. I was like running away. I would have been like in plays. I would have done all this fun stuff that would have been cool. And I said, instead of running away from everything, I'm just going to say yes and go right at it. So this is like something I have in my brain now. So if I stick a pretty girl on a train, I have to go talk to her. Like, it's just this thing that's I've turned on this switch that you have to kind of walk through the uncomfortable, walk through the suffering. And it's been like amazing. Like, after you tackle the biggest mountain, everything else, I just feel like everything else has been seamless. Comedy has its own struggles, but you know, just the goal of that was just to get over it. And no, you get over it. Like, you have a development deal and like you're going through that whole thing. So the hardest part is just trying to balance all of it. And that's what I've learned is like, I used to be so black and white, like absolutes, like it's all in or, you know, I gotta quit my job and just do comedy. That's not how it works. I've learned that like balance is the key. So balance a little bit of doing with a little bit of being, the yin and the yang, and all that jazz. So I'm sorry, guys. I just ramble. I told you.
Oh, I love it so much. I also love the pace at which you talk, also being a very fast talker. Thrilling, you know?
Yeah.
That's great. On the edge of my seat. So I love the fact that you did stand up, because I think that having stage fright is one thing, but stand-up comedy seems to be like the hardest place you could go, you know, like there were other avenues to overcome stage fright. And so from this idea of awareness and just knowing yourself more and having practices like meditation and breath and just understanding that you're working with those layers of mind, body, spirit, how did that kind of influence stand-up comedy? And like, what was your first experience like, you know, of going in and being like, I'm doing this? How did that, tell us about that? I'm so interested.
Yeah. So the whole, and I learned that, I don't know why, I always liked comedy. You're always around it. I just thought like, why am I so drawn to it? Like, I'm so terrified of it, but why am I so drawn to it? And I think that there's a lesson in your fears. So there was something there for me to be learned. I didn't know, and I couldn't really talk about it, but going through the process of comedy is a self-exploration. So for example, when I get on stage, there's 50 people. I didn't know what people saw me as. So when I started comedy, I looked at myself in a totally different way than people looked at me. And it took me a while to figure out, oh, well, what are people looking at? Like, what are people seeing? And then, because that's the first thing you get on stage is you kind of have to see what people see and then shit on yourself. Like, you have to see okay, they saw this, and then you have to kind of quickly make fun of yourself or do something to get through it. So I was coming at it from like a different way. Like, I see myself as this Scott, and then the owner would come up to me like, you got to do this more. Like, and I was like, I was trying to do the cause and the effect Scott, right? The philosophy and politics and this and that. And not saying that doesn't work. It's just, I didn't have the skill set for that yet. But if I do something to call somebody a bitch and do the little Italian thing, people fucking hilarious. People pop for it. And I would never do that. But I would never like be able to put that together. So it's been a journey of self-exploration of like seeing, oh, well, this is the way people see me. Because I'll tell you, I saw myself as this overweight, dorky, like not the cool kid. And it turns out I am the fucking cool kid. And I'm just trying to be like, I didn't see what people were seeing, especially in comedy, that there's a bunch of disheveled schleps up on the stage. Like, I was the hot guy in comedy. So getting on stage and having girls like, ooh, I thought people were making fun of it. It was like a whole weird thing. Amazing. So that has been such a cool thing. But as far as like the practice, repetition is the key to getting comfortable, right? So when you're on stage and you're talking, like, this is why I love podcasting, because this is like the easier version of comedy. Like right now, I'm talking to two people I never would have spoken to in my life. We're connected through technology. We're in the moment. We can't mess around. This is beautiful. It's like what I love. With comedy, I can't do that with one face because there's too many faces, right? And that's when somebody I'm high in neuroticism. That's why people like me so much. I could see you guys. You guys laugh and you have a good time. I like that. I'm in happy. But in comedy, I don't know what people are thinking, only if they laugh. So it's harder when you kind of do public speaking or this to do that. So going through that process was like having to look people in the eyes, engage them while you're doing it, and be in the moment while doing this. Like that was the hardest thing, because my first time on stage, you're in your head. And when you're in your head with comedy, you're done. Like that's the biggest thing. The second you start thinking, like it's almost like it's almost like being like a Zen master almost. When you're living intuitively, and you're just talking. You're not thinking and talking. That is what great comedy does. And that's what I had to learn the hard way. Cause I would be like, when I just like said, fuck it. And I just started doing it. And listen, there was a lot of repetitions. And I'll give you guys the quick story of what happened. Like I was 6 months in and I was not half-assing it, but you're doing the first step in comedy is doing an open mic. So that's like practice. You're doing an open mic for other comedians. So they're not going to, they don't want you to do good. They don't want to laugh at you. So it's hard to gauge everything. So the next step would be bringing people to shows. And then the next step would be a development deal. My cousins call me and they say, we signed you up for the biggest comedy show in New York, the Showcase. It's in 2 months. Good luck. Good luck. This is seriously what happened. I'm going to be honest what happened. I threw up immediately. I threw up. They told me I threw up. I was like, hard. I can't do this. Panic. Whole thing. It was terrifying. And in that 2 months, I got so good at comedy because I realized like how you make the diamond is the pressure. Like I have to, particularly me, I really work better under pressure. So I got so good in those 2-3 months. I was doing a lot of reps. I was doing all this, blah, 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 blah. Go do the comedy show. I win the whole thing. I win the Showcase. I get a development deal. And I was like, holy shit. Now through that, the amount of practice I was doing, I really went deep into my mind because it takes, I would say Joe Dispenza was that first, the new age, the new age stuff that, you got to feel your emotions while meditating and feel empowered and bring those two together. That's really what Joe's thing's doing. In a nutshell, that's why the name of my podcast is Cause and the Effect. Like Joe really changed the way, because going into this stuff, I was like, what is this fucking voodoo? This is some nonsense. I'm just going to have to get paid. I'm working to a cult. I went to the Joe Dispenza workshop in 2019.
Yeah.
Met Joe, did the brain waves. I was like, I'm in. The science backs it. I'll do it. It's all good. So the mix of Joe with, are you guys familiar with deprivation tanks, sensory deprivation tanks? You ever heard of that?
Yeah.
So I got one here. I have one built in my house. I love sensory deprivation tanks. So if you could imagine doing your meditation, not only are you being calm, but you're being in turning off all your sensory things. I was spending so much time in that thing, just preparing. So I really think that fundamentally changed me to be more calmer and just see, I don't know. It's just, it's an expansion of awareness. And even my boss was like, what? He's like, what's going on? He's like, what? You're just different. I'm still me. It's just seeing things. The way I try to describe it is like, I would look at things. Most people look at stuff from one certain level. So if you have somebody who's like a guy who wants to look at women in a certain way, looking at them at a physical level, then let's say somebody who's into the mind would look at people on a psychological level. Then somebody like a cop would look at things on like a, almost at a criminal level. Like, what do I get for safety reasons? It's almost like I could see all the different levels of everything and just be more like, everything just got easier. Like after my divorce, I just like made all this money at work and just everything was flowing through me, like an abundance was flowing. And I do attribute that to Joe. I attribute it to just doing the work, but it's like keeping life so like being pretty minimal and just focusing on certain things made my life like, it just leveled me up to so many different variables. And we can go into what pieces of that or any questions you guys have on that, but I will pause and stop for whatever.
So cool.
Yeah, we had a journey with Joe Dispenza as well. We really connected to his work. Probably about the same.
We went to a workshop in 2018.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
That's similar timing. Yeah.
I think the last time, he might have come to New Zealand.
It was the last time he was here.
So 3 days. So it was very cool, very powerful.
What do you guys think?
Oh,
Love
amazing.
It. Yeah.
We're actually both of us were
really sick
at the time and we weren't going to go. And
we're like lying here on the couch. It was like dying, when you're like so much body aches and like I can't even go, and any kind of like light or sound was just so hectic. And you turn up, there's hundreds of people everywhere.
Pumping music. He's like, let's get into this. Yeah.
I was like, I remember seeing people I knew. I was like, I can't even talk to you because I'm just holding reserves. And sitting there on that first night, I was like, I'm going to throw up everywhere.
And then we did that
which meditation it was.
The intro evening, and then the next day started in the morning, and it must have been like the second meditation. You know how he does the big chunk of intro, and then boom, you do the work, and then the big chunk of intro, then you do the work. It was probably the second meditation, and there was one point in the meditation where I hit this peak where I was like, I'm either going to break through this or I'm going to vomit on the person in front of me.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was like I was sweating, and then
we're here for it.
and then totally broke through it and was fine. Like
But both of us in the same meditation came out, looked at each other, and we're like, we're not sick anymore. Like, it happened in the same meditation at the same time. It was the most bizarre thing of like experiencing the work on such a physical level, where, you know, it was right away like, wow, that was actually much more of the mind and moving through something. And there was like residual kind of tiredness, but the actual intensity of what we were experiencing went away. So I mean, we were pretty sold on Joe before, but we were very sold on Joe.
I'm in the same boat. I don't know what the hell was happening. After I went to that, my meditation just like, I was just seeing, like, it's one thing to clear your mind and do it for anxiety and practical reasons. Then it's another thing to like take it to that next level, like seeing beings and just weird things. I don't like talking about what happens in my meditation because like, I don't want to ruin it for somebody else. Like these are things I learned in my Tibetan. I don't want people to expect certain things. Everybody's different. Like, you know, I was reading a book, like people are expecting white lights. Like I've never seen white lights, but it's different. It was just another intensity, but then like that whole idea of bringing that emotion, like really just the one thing Joe made me start doing is like really start feeling grateful and feeling empowered. Like it's one thing to say it and one thing to take a bunch of caffeine and say, you know, I'm all jacked up, but it's like actually feeling it. And like, that was that first step on it. And I come back to Joe because that's what worked. But I started just leaning more towards like the sacred texts. And I went through a little bit of Hinduism. I went through a little bit of Tibetan now. Cause I felt like I was digging a 1 foot hole, like 100 1-foot holes. And I was like, I just want, like, we're all going to get to the same spot, whether it's new age, whether it's old age, whether it's Christianity, whatever, take your poison. And for me, just, I met a guy came on my podcast, this guy, Hector Marcel, shout out to 3 Jewels, like a not-for-profit in New York. And it was just like really cool, just really chill. Cause I'm like being in New York, I'm like always looking like, where's the money you want from me? Or like, where's the, you know, you're going to beat, like, where's the cult thing? And, so my bullshit meter is very high. And I just love these guys. So it's really chill. I just yoga with them, but mostly just do like a Dharma class, which is just discussing like the unveiling of the cosmic reality underneath you and Indra's net and all this stuff. And, the way that they describe it, it's just like unplanting your conditioned seeds that have kind of been within you, just either due to education or through like that comparative lens, or XYZ. So I just really like I like the meditating side of it, obviously, but I like the philosophy edge of it and like being able to understand why you think the way you think. And that has been like the coolest thing for me is like uncovering the pieces I didn't want to uncover. Like it sucks some of it. Like even June, I always take 2 months and I go back to Carl Jung because I would say Carl Jung is my favorite psychologist. You guys familiar with Carl Jung at all?
Absolutely. Yeah.
He's the best. And every time I do some shadow work and I get dream work and it's just like, Jesus Christ, like I just can't handle it because it becomes too much. But it's been helpful seeing the blind spots. That's really what I've been trying to do on this journey. Is like, I know the things that work. Like I want to see, and honestly, it's been a lot of the people near me. Like, listen, I want to know what I can work on. And just like, cause I'm not seeing it. That's why it's repressed or this or that. So, it's been interesting. And then having, you know, like your cousins and like your little, like all my little cousins like come in and talking to me about it, or guys in the gym coming up to me, asking me about the podcast. Like it's interesting seeing what you can do, like dropping a little pebble in a pond. Like you don't realize the ripple effect you could have on people. Not saying like, you know, my podcast gets maybe 5,000 to 6,000 views an episode, but like, just like having that real effect on people and just even speaking like who I'm supposed to be forward has been like so cool. Cause I think, you know, I thought going into it, people were like talking shit about it and like, oh, what's this kid lost his mind? Like this and that. And people have been so receptive of it. Like, just like not, you know, I think I tried to not push it on anybody. I really like in my daily life, people bring it up, I'll talk about it. But I look at spirituality, it's like, it's one wave of all of us doing one thing, but at the same point, it's such an individualized journey that, you know, maybe a person won't meditate. Maybe they want to do Tai Chi, or like, if you're more of an active person, want to go Kung Fu or whatever that is, or you want to just do the philosophy of it. Like that's cool too. So there's so many different avenues to go. And I try on my podcast to be the least amount of bullshit as possible. Like here's the tools I'm using, and use them if you want, use them if you don't. So that's the way I kind of look at it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is that hard thing of, you know, you get excited when you find something and wanting to kind of push it, but there are so many ways. And it is interesting, you know, like the sort of new age and doing the action, but then coming back to the philosophy. Obviously our journey is very much in the philosophy of yoga, and we've very much gone into the philosophy of Tibetan Buddhism, which John's really into, and studying things like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, which is also really interesting, you know, I think from a point of awareness, you know, and one of the ways that we unpack the sort of conditioning and all of these things that have made us who we thought we were. And it's, when you start to study more of the scripture and this type of philosophy, it just unpacks it because it goes against so much of the stuff we initially learned. And it poses always more questions, right? Like, well, how does this fit into my current understanding, and who am I in relation to what this is saying? And then this is where, where we come up against so much cognitive dissonance, or I like to call it the kind of fear walls. You're hitting these places of like, oh, well, no, that's not real because it's uncomfortable for me. As opposed to, I've got tools that create a sense of gap and separation so I can breathe and then observe something different and actually integrate it into my own path. And so I think studying philosophy and studying scripture is such a valid, or a valuable, let's say, way of doing this, right? And unraveling ourselves. It's just interesting that these texts have been around so long, but the power that they actually hold, they're like little keys that tend to unlock aspects of ourselves, but all in such a different way. And even like, I really respect that thing of what you mentioned before about having the meditations and having all of these experiences of what you see and what you've experienced, but not overly having to share it. Because I also think that gets really, it takes away the sacred essence of what we're experiencing when we're trying to use words and language to describe something that can't actually be described with words and language. And then we sort of take the sacredness away from ourselves, and we take it away from someone else who then is, trying to look for those things of, well, I respect Scott, so I've got to have that, or I haven't had.
Exactly. And that's something new. I learned that like recently, because, all this, there's only so many different things. Like, you could sum up everything into like that is learned by us in like an essay. But the thing is, like, to condition yourself to it, because if I hear something today and I evolve or I change in the next month, but the next month I'm going to look at it a little differently. I'm going to come at it from a different way. And that's something I learned. Like, humility has been like something I try to work on, because I'm a little bit of an ego kid from Brooklyn, big personality. People love me. What do you want me to say? Like, to say that comes out. When you do that stuff, because I was always so happy to tell people what I saw at meditation, because then it's like, well, I'm like, I'm spiritual and I'm above you. Like, I try to just stay away from that stuff now. And I've been, by talking, I've been having like all these swamis come on the podcast, like these really religious. I'm like, wow, like, it's all like, it's not mysterious in a way like they're trying to keep a secret. They really just want you to truly experience this for yourself. And that's the same way I'm trying just to take their shit and just repeat it. Honestly, that's just this. So
well, we're so used to having our power taken away, right? Absolutely. That's the biggest issue. And awareness is understanding, like, oh, I am the power source. The amount of times I'm like, but like, tell me what you see in me, and they're like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything. You have to experience it. You actually already know. Stop trying to like avoid experiencing it yourself to have someone else give you the answer. And it's even interesting. I mean, we work with a lot of people who have more psychic abilities and different types of healers. And I absolutely fall into that of like, oh, but who am I? Like, how do you see this? What past life did I have? And we fall into this world of, again, wanting to give our power away and not just reclaim it fully in ourselves. And I can understand intellectually this idea of how powerful I am as, say, a spiritual being having a human experience. But in daily practice, do I really, or am I still falling victim to, can I give my power to someone else? So it might not be the school teacher anymore, or even the government, but it might be the healer over here, or the swami over here. And so it's that level of awareness that we have to cultivate to be aware of where we're giving our power away. Because I think that's a huge aspect, that it's kind of a tripping stone, right? Where you sort of see it, but then it comes up again and again. We talk about that it's kind of on a spiral. You're always healing on a spiral, and the spiral's going up, but you kind of hit the same
it always feels like
learnings
maybe you haven't learned,
and
it's back again, that same lesson. It's like, wow, maybe I didn't learn that lesson right, but actually you've collected it, and then you're back to that lesson, because there is always more to learn. And around the spiral you go,
all the
there's
different
always
perceptions.
a new perspective.
Exactly.
We love the spiral metaphor.
I'm a big fan of it too, because I always tell people, like, because let's not say, I don't know if, like, I feel like I'm here to do something, right? With speaking and all the things I do with this, and like, I do all the comedy stuff. And like, I said this to somebody the other day, I was like, maybe comedy isn't like what I'm going to end up doing like full time. And but you put so much time into it. I'm like, yeah, but like, it's like, there's no problem with that, because I'm trying to like you're going, and this is where it comes from, the New Testament, right? You're chasing the moving star. And that's, to me, that means you're like who you are, because as you change, your goals are going to change. So maybe like I just got asked to do like a speaking engagement at the New York State Speaking Society in June. Like maybe I'll do speaking, because honestly, for me, comedy has been such a cool thing of learning about like that awareness. But once you're doing it, like I don't want to just get laughs. It's almost like I want something deeper. So maybe speaking is the answer. Like that could be something cool, and I'll go ahead and I'll take that up. And it's all. And I look at it like it's almost like a game where it's like you have the tree of speaking, and then like you learn comedy, you learn how to speak and hold your pause, and all these little things that come along with it. So like nothing's ever wasted, because everything's so interchangeable. And even like if I never speak in public ever again, like I still will be able to take that confidence that I could do it, because I was such a different person before. Like I would go to school and like have to make sure there's not a speech in the thing. It's just such a crazy thing, man.
Yeah, I think a lot of the stand-up comedians that we respect the most are the ones that they bring you into the theme of whatever their set is. And then they hit you with the philosophy. They hit you with the actual thing that they're passionate about, that they want to talk about. I can really never remember her last name, but Eliza something or other.
Yes, Schwizinger.
Yeah.
There we go. And Amy Schumer. These women that have this ability to bring up the big topics. By walking you in through the mainstream kind of experience of life, and then they hit you hard with the actual philosophy, the actual kind of change point. And I think stand-up comedy has such a way of reaching people. It's such a kind of sneaky way in to get people to think about something in a different way.
It puts you into a really interesting state, when you're more relaxed. And what humor actually does, I think it is like one of the highest levels of intelligence, to be able to do comedy. It's there's just so much intelligence and so much awareness that actually has to go into it when it's done well. And I just love how you talked about that, but how do they see me? And then how do you find that without actually getting feedback, without a different level of awareness? Like what an incredible journey. And kind of makes me think, like Joseph Campbell, right? Like we're on the journey, and the hero's journey, and then being there, and this idea of, oh no, but I've got to keep doing it because I'm good at it, as opposed to, but I've taken all of the gold, right? I've taken all of the treasure and the learning. And when I get back to my village, this is what I'm sharing. This is the insight that I've gained from all of that learning. And that we're so kind of conditioned to think that it needs to just be really, really big and then kind of get burnt out, rather than I'm taking it all now, but in this beautiful way of how I will then share and impart the knowledge to the village when I'm back, because I'm the hero of this journey. So it's just it resonates with what you're saying.
I love, that's my guy, Joseph Campbell. That's like my favorite. That's where I did all that mythology stuff. Because it's like, once you realize like your life is just a hero's journey, like over and over again, it's not like one big journey. It's like a different chapter. And like for me, I'm used to like the first step, ordinary world. Then you have step 2, your call to adventure. Then you have the refusal of the call, and then you meet the mentor, and then you cross the threshold. And then I always get stuck on step 6. It's like your test, your allies, your enemies. That's like where I'm at with the comedy now, because the truth is I've been doing this 2 years. Like you're not going to have the skill that Dave Chappelle or Bill Burr would have to tell their story and because that's the one thing, right? In your first 4 to 5 years, they say you're trying to figure out who you are to them. And then where are you playing that piece on? Like, where are you playing the piece that you're missing? Like Bill Burr just always plays that he's like a chauvinist pig. Like he's not, his wife is black. Like he's obviously not, but it's funny that he is. And Chappelle has his shtick. Everybody has their shtick. So when you find who you are, which I think I've done, then what are you missing? And then you start developing your themes. And like, it takes a lot of skill to be able to be funny with telling a story underneath it. So it could be that I just don't have those skills yet. Because if I had the skill to talk about what we're talking about and laugh, people then it's like, that's a perfect thing. Like, that's the goal. But right now splitting it up is good enough. So I'm still figuring out both. So it's interesting because like podcasting helps comedy and comedy helps podcasting.
No doubt.
Very cool.
And meditation helps everything.
Yeah.
Meditation. Yeah. I've decided this year to like the goal of this, have the highest possible quality of my consciousness. Hold up on my meditation. I really said like I'm used to doing things by myself. And that's not, when you need these next steps, you can't just go to YouTube and like just YouTube, after you're kind of, I could watch my thoughts now. now I could detach, but like, what's the next step? So that's why I said, let me really focus on the Tibetan community and just be around people. Like, and my life has been so like vibrant. Everything's just nicer instead of being around people who are just walking around miserable or worrying about money. Like in my job, we all make very good money. And like, we think we're like Wolf of Wall Street. So you get like a deal at $60,000, people are ringing a bell and we're losing our minds. And it's like, I don't even do that anymore. And people are like, why don't you care about the money? It's like, I don't want to, because this too shall pass, right? The money will, I don't want to get too high or get too low. I just got that tattoo right here. Like it's, that's like the goal of this one. Cause you see people change with the money. And that's like the one thing I look for when I'm hiring people, because we kind of created this, like, we're a one-stop shop for billionaires. So they come to us to buy a baseball team, or if you want an M&A transaction, or you want to create something called like a family office. That's like what I specialize in. So I'm very particular with the people. Like you have to go through everybody in my firm, and then you have to talk to me, the boss, because I'm really, and all I'm caring about, I don't care about the job. I'm worried about, like, are you a good person, or is the money going to change you this and that and this and that? So it's just funny the way I do stuff, because I'm like the head of HR, I'm the head of the psychology department. I'm like, I do everything, all this stuff for the firm. Yeah. So it's, I'm very grateful for that, because it's what I always want to do is like, I wanted to be a businessman, but not totally. I work, everybody knows that I work, if everybody's listening from my job, I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it's pretty good. You're making all this money, you work 3 days a week. I don't got to stress. And like, because what you guys, like the person that you guys are meeting is the person that a billionaire meets. So take it or leave it, guy. That's what and I think it's funny, because I had this conversation with a couple of these guys, like, why do you go with us? And like, just, you're not like a bullshitter. Like that's what I try to tell people, like, I can bullshit, but I'm not a bullshitter. I try to tell people, like, the pitches will save you time, will save you money. There's not going to be any BS. And that's their most valuable thing. They don't need money. They just need their time. So
what I'm interested in, your past and this relationship with your father and the gambling, and then the interest in the hedge fund kind of, is there a relationship here? Because I don't know much about finance, but is there a relationship with the whole idea of gambling? Is hedge fund kind of like playing the stocks, like you're in the gambling kind of world on a bigger scale?
Yeah, in a way. So I have, and we'll overlay this to, like, in my 20s, I was addicted to like everything. I have like major addiction issues, like pick your poison. I've been addicted to it. And like, you stop drinking, then you go towards this, or you move towards this, and you go towards sex, like everything. I've done it. And that was part why I really said I'm gonna go deep down spiritually when I was 28, 29, whatever that age was. So I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. Like I can nobody ever notices, because I'm like, I could just talk my way through stuff and nobody will realize it. So I was like, I just have to stop this myself. But I was, funny enough, I was supposed to play college football, actually. So when I was 18, I signed my letter of intent to play at a big college in Florida, and I blew my knee out really bad. And that kind of changed everything. Because at that point, I wasn't thinking, I'm a dumb 18-year-old kid. I wasn't thinking about making money by that point. I was just like going to play football. That was really all I was worried about. My mother put it in my head, like, you're really good at numbers. Me and my mother's great. She's just a torture. Like every night I come home, we would do 2 hours of math, spelling, like math cards for 2 hours, and just rip through them. We do a lot of math beads and all that stuff. She said, listen, you have 3 choices. You could go into finance, you could be a doctor, or you could be a lawyer. That was the 3 options I was given. I was like, Ma, I think I kind of like social sciences. She's like, no, that's not going to make money. She was like, are you going to work at the psychology factory? That's not going to happen. Like, you have to do this. So the only reason I did finance was because it was the lowest amount of years in school. So finance, you could do in 4 years. I figured I can get that done in 3. I can get my MBA, or a doctor's 10 years and a lawyer was 8 years. So I was like, that's the only reason I did it. But
love it.
That's really the only reason. So I banged that out. So I ended up getting a BS in finance, a BS in economics, and then an MBA. So I got so technically I was an accountant and a financial analyst. Now with that though, the gambling comes into play with investing for people's money. So going into that, everybody thinks I'm going to put $10 million in, I'm going to get $10 million out. Being with the billionaires and learning. So this is like a family office is what it's called. A family office is like, you guys like know an investment firm, like you have an investment firm with a bunch of different investors. A family office is one firm for one billionaire's money. So they have their philanthropic needs, they have their investments, they have their foundations, they have their whatever is under their umbrella. So that's what I specialize in. They taught me actually how they do it like the right way, which I actually do. So I don't gamble at all with my money. I'm actually pretty good, because what they taught me to do was it's about the compounding interest. So it's about not making a home run. It's about hitting a single every year. So instead of trying to make 20, 25%, everybody, all kids nowadays, they think they're going to make all their money on Dogecoin and AMC. It's not that at all. It's that you want to make 4 to 5% on your money and have patience and wait 15, 20 years. So I'll give you guys an example. If we played a game of golf, 18 holes, right? And I said, let's play for $1 on hole 1, but let's double it. By the time we get to, but let's double it every hole. So we went from 1 to 2 to 4, whatever. By the time you got to hole 18, you would be playing for $36,000. And that is the power of compounding interest. So understanding that has helped me be able to like not be a degenerate with my money and like not gamble it away. But having that gambling mentality has let me, like, I'm fearless. Like, I don't care. Like, I'll make an investment. I've made some investments that work. I make some that don't. So it's definitely like helped me. And that's honestly part of why I got divorced, because my ex-wife wouldn't allow me to invest money. And I'm like, I'm not saying I know what I'm doing, but this is what I do for billionaires. If I could do it for billionaires, I could do it for us. So, because like having money sitting in an account just drives me crazy, because it's, I'm not making money on it, and like I could just be making money on it. So, that is it in a nutshell. So I being in a hedge fund, did just that particular hedge fund, like mostly in hedge funds, it'd be a little different. That one was just really built on intergenerational wealth. Because if those people are making 3% on their $1 billion, they don't got to really worry about much. Yeah. And then that mix. So I learned how to do that. So I have a couple of my safe stuff, and then I have like my fun gambling stuff, but like, that's what gets me going. And that's why I like, investing in properties and having like, I'm lucky enough to be able to co-invest with some of these families. So I'm able to get like, like these guys will invest $5 million. And I'm like, can I invest my 25, 50,000, please help me? And they'll let me do it. So it's taught me a lot. So it is funny, like all these little skills everything is like interchangeable in a way. And like, I really, like I lost a lot of money right in the middle of my marriage. I was gambling. Like and again, like if you saw when I was working at the hedge fund, I got sick. Like something was just manifesting. When I was married for a year and a half, I was so miserable. I was getting anxiety. It was just like coming home and being shit on every day. So I started gambling, and I think subconsciously I was like looking for a reason to like get out. So I really got into a really bad case of gambling. I lost a lot of money. But like, I don't regret that, because I needed to, that's kind of, it makes you almost callous to like nothing really, like I was at zero. Like the day I got divorced, I gave her all the money we had, because I didn't want to be a bad guy and like that, whatever. So I had $0 to my name, and I'm like, I'm going to build everything back up. And like, now it's crazy. And like doing that, even just doing that, like, I know I could lose everything today and I'll just build it back up too. So.
Yeah. Amazing. What a superpower,
Yeah.
And then to have all of that experience, and to then bring in this level of awareness and all of these other, skills, and leaning into more of that kind of spiritual path is just so incredible what you can offer others to be in that world,
It's interesting, because like my cousins are all philosophy, psychology guys, and they're all struggling with money. So they're all like, your mother was cool because you got the resume now, and now you're getting into it. So it's like, I think it was all meant to happen a certain way to me, because now I'm bougie. I need money. I can't not be making big bucks. So it's funny how it all like lines up like this. So
yeah. I mean, it is rare, like we know a lot of, ourselves included, and just sort of people that are more on that spiritual path and always stuck with money. Like it's like a living in some sort of black hole, and just nobody tends to understand it. And it's also this, there's this whole kind of scarcity consciousness of like, it's bad. And it's really beautiful to hear you talk about it, especially at that level, and just be like, this is where I am. It's still just people, I'm still just a person doing this, and then bringing in the kind of awareness and spiritual side to it is really amazing. And so your story and what you're doing is really special and inspiring, and it's beautiful that you're speaking on a podcast, and have your own podcast, and even through comedy, and just the way you interact with people in a different way of like, are you a good person? And also that education of how you educate someone to stay humble in this experience, because it's actually not the individual's fault, right? Like if you get a lot of money or a lot of power, it takes quite a lot of awareness and skill to stay humble, right? It takes a lot of work. And I think it's easy to just blame people of like, oh, look, you've got a big ego, or you're being a dick, basically. But it's like, well, having money and having all of those things, it is like an energy in itself which takes over, and there has to be a level of awareness and practice to keep the humility alive. Do you see that? And do you have any kind of insight.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
got a lot. Yeah, I could say a lot about that. So it was funny because I never cared about money. Like money was never a thing. All I wanted to do was just have enough to feel comfortable. Now, whatever that number is, everybody has different numbers. Once I hit that, it was just like I expanded more because you don't got to worry about money. So that's what everybody's worrying about it most of the time. I don't got to worry about it. And through the process of like it's weird now. I do like to like dress up nice and all this stuff. Like I got rid of cars. I don't have a car. I got rid of I don't buy like I try to live within means because like what do you need? Like I realize like why do I have a BMW? Like what is the point? Like what is the actual point? So it's because it's saying a certain standard, right? Even having a house, like the first thing you do to show you're successful in New York is like tell everybody I bought a house. I don't have a house. I have my little apartment. I have a little wellness room back there with my deprivation tank and my yoga mat. That's all I need. Like this is really what I need. Do I need a $15,000 deprivation tank? Maybe not, but I love my tank. You know, it's about finding that balance. But my awareness did go up just by not having to worry about money. But at the same point, I do feel like it's the yin and yang because one thing implies the other. So by saying that, I'm also implying that if I didn't have it, I may not be as aware. So that is something like even like what you guys are doing, like just having a job where like you're fully engaged in the spiritual journey is beautiful in me. And like I look up to people like yourselves that do that because I just can't let go of that. That's an ego thing for me. It's like letting go of that identity of Scott, of really like, you know, because I have a feeling that one day I will have to let go because it's been a struggle of like working because the way I look at it is like 3 days a week. It's not bad and you're grateful and all that stuff. People are struggling, but at the same point, you could be, you know, reading your books and, you know, providing more like something on the level you could be doing a little better. So I am trying to balance now, but it has been an internal struggle for me because that's the ego talking of money and like, you know, that at least needing that, whatever, you may need. So it has been a little bit of a struggle, but my relationship with it, like never being greedy and always like doing the right thing. Like in my company, if you saw, like I could be the intern. Like I just dress up like this and I'm like, yeah, what do you guys like? Is you guys doing good? Like I'm more worried about how everybody happy. So like we do a different style of bonuses. So like instead of giving kids money, obviously every quarter will come in. If you hit your numbers, you'll come in and you'll say, what do you want? Some kids that want money, you get money. Some kids want more time off. So you go take time off. Do you want, like one kid wanted me as his wingman for a month. And I'm like, dude, you got me. Let's go out that's it. That's what you want. So it's really a nice little, I try to like, obviously we're doing business, but like, it's not a business vibe in our office. So I really try to like push that. And my partner is the same way. He's like more of a classic New York kid from Long Island, accountant. He's like, you know, puts a button, like he tries. So we're both, it's a good balance of like, you can't have me just run. It's like having a crazy person run the show. We need the balance. He's nice, normal, does the accounting, does the administrative stuff. So it's really a nice balance. That's what we try. But he's, I taught him some mindset stuff. He's taught me some, you know, like he started getting the ulcers a couple of years ago. He was going through a marriage. Everything was good with him. They were having trouble having a baby. And I showed him some mindfulness stuff. And now all the kids come up to me, well, what are you reading today? And we'll have like a little, not that I need to have like classes about this, just if you guys want to talk about it, just come into my office and we'll talk about it. So it's about like, just not like taking away, like it's all one, like there's not just talk about finance, talk about this, talk about that. Like you could talk about everything because it's all going to help you on different, like the reason why I started my podcast was there's a billionaire. You guys have Kind bars? Kind? You guys ever heard of Kind? Kind? Kind. When you guys are done, Google. It's a big company in America. Okay. It's like this guy. His name was David Lubetsky, and he's a multi-billionaire. But like not when you meet a billionaire, his son. When you meet like a second generation, then you have like a little bit of a jerk. This guy was created all his money his own, Mexican American, great company, great guy. He was the one that suggested a podcast. That's the only reason I really have a podcast. He was like, you should really do this. Cause he was asking me, like, usually I'm talking about business, talking about, you know, how we're going to get this transaction to this. He was like, you should really like, you know, he was just asking me questions about weight loss, about like what my practice is. He's like, this would really be good. And it's just funny, just because he was a billionaire, it gave me the confidence, like, yeah, let's do it. So he funded the start of the podcast. So it's cool stuff. It's really like, I'm very grateful. And just like, I like if my life ended tomorrow, like I got enough stories. Like the story could end now, and you know, it's all good.
You know, it's just like, hey, I think it's beautiful you're in that world with this level of awareness. I think it's really easy to think, oh no, I should be out or I should be committed. But it's like exactly that. It is all one. It is not two separate worlds. It's not like I've got to go and do the spiritual world over here and the kind of, let's say, finance or big money world over here. It's like, it's one thing. And actually, I think a lot of us that are here right now, like on Earth, are trying to bridge this balance, you know, that you can be in any part of life and still be here, still have awareness, still be good, right? And still know who we are as spiritual beings and still actually act from a place of kindness and love, no matter where you are. So removing yourself from that world in a way would be kind of detrimental to the people that you then experience, you know? And then what someone replaces you who's just like, well, another dickhead. We don't need more dickheads in big money, you know? We need more you in there. Who's actually
I never looked at it that way.
Yeah.
Because it was like when you're going through that process in that world, like, you know, it would never come up. And now it just comes up more because it's like when people Google my company or me, that the podcast, like I got the SEO pumping for not for the company, for the podcast. Cause that's what it's about. So it has been, I think in the beginning it was more of, it was a real struggle for me to come out and talk about this stuff. And now it's like, no, this is me. And like, I'm proud of the practice I have. I'm proud of being, you know, into Tibetan Buddhism and all this different work. Cause it's so interesting that we're in this time where you just see the last 100 years, the technological sciences have taken off, right? Where we have all social media and all this stuff, but you're seeing a lot of uncertainty and a lot of anxiety. And I personally think the social sciences, people will need to really dabble more in that space to kind of catch up, to be able to deal with this. Cause in New Zealand, we were having this conversation about COVID. It's like, there's probably a lot of anger. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of, you have to have the tools to be able to to deal with this stuff, whether it be of awareness to see who's bullshitting you. Because in America, you know, we have an old 88-year-old guy running the president. Like, it's a joke. And people have to be able to see that. And you know, to be able to see whatever, you know, I don't want to get too political, but
I mean, we could go there, but
you have to be able to see who's telling what. And since 2000, from 2000 to present, 99.6% of the information on the internet has been created. So this is what you're seeing. You're seeing an overload of information. And people, you have to be able to see what's real and what's not. And even when you go down the spiritual journey, that's why I've seen, there's a lot. I'm sure you guys probably come across some spiritual gurus or people are trying to, you know, whatever that nonsense is. It's like, no, I'm here. I'm almost like I look at myself like a watcher. Like I'm the watcher of the finance for the company. I'm the watcher for the spiritual world in a way. Like I'm not going to let people get sold and this and that. So I just try to do the right thing. You try to be as real as possible with everything you're doing, and like just speak your being forward in the most authentic way you could.
That just speaks our language. And I think it is that beautiful thing that if you're in both worlds, you show other people they can be in both worlds. Because until you had that, you know, the huge health crisis or everything falls apart, it's like this idea of, oh, well, I can only be in this one world because this is who I am. And you fall into kind of a false archetype rather than understanding that you can actually have both, because we're so much more multifaceted.
That is
multifaceted, and it's beautiful. That's kind of what you're doing, and that you have the energy and the ability to be in all those worlds is the gift. To turn away from that would be turning away from the gift, right? From that path. So it is just amazing. But I think there's never, ever, ever any assurity, I think that's the word, of what the path is, but that's the point. If we were super confident in the moment that we knew that everything was actually as it was supposed to be, we wouldn't have that same drive. You know, we wouldn't have that same essence of curiosity and movement, that everything's actually in motion, that the world is always in process. It's functionalism. It's always there. So we have to always be like, and what's going on over here? And in the spiritual world, it can get really obsessive with what is my path? What is my journey? What am I here to do? To a point where it's too rigid. And a lot of our systems and things are based in this idea of rigidity and like a static purpose, where actually it's functional and it's flowing and it's a process. And if you can just go with that, like you've illustrated really beautifully, right? Everything opened up, there is a sense of flow, then we tend to understand more, and never trying to force things into boxes that they're not ready to belong in. It's probably the way of saying that.
No, and that's a great thing to even like a great topic, because I feel like a lot of people, at least in America and that are younger, they're looking for certainty. And if you're looking for certainty in reality, there's none. It doesn't exist. We're all, it's impermanence. So like, I think people try to control things. That's where the power comes from. That's what kind of pushes me away. I try to teach these billionaires that, because it's all these guys. It's like one guy was talking to me this the other day. He was so upset that he has $5 billion and his friend is worth $7 billion. And that just showed me like money will not make you happy. Because this guy he'll get 7 billion, then he'll be worried about somebody taking the 7 billion from him. Like it's more your mind than anything else. So it's like all these little teachings pop up every day. So it's interesting, but like people have to learn to accept change. Like I love waking up and like what's going to happen today. Like I have no idea. We're going to figure it out. It creates critical thinking. It creates problem solving. And like you were saying earlier, like a lot of people want everything kind of fed to them. And I think that's, the issue with the education system and everybody in America, at least, and everybody you're just doing what you're told by somebody else. And if you start like tracing it back, like what, why? Like my kid, before he goes to school, will have the School of Scott. Let me tell you, we're going to be meditating. We're going to be reading some Tibetan. We're going to be reading the philosophical problems of change. And we're going to be breaking stuff down. He's going to be one wise dude. So it's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It would be cool, if we just we're talking about this with a friend yesterday, they say all the different ways of knowing, the different ways of knowing things. We get taught in school, it's kind of one way of knowing, but actually knowing from here and our own intuition and our own kind of feeling, and that what is natural discernment, so important, right, to be teaching children. And then at the moment, we're kind of teaching ourselves as adults that there is this way of knowing things in the world that goes beyond maybe even the scientific method. And it's not discrediting any of the ways. It's saying we can use all of them. We're much more complex in the way of knowing and learning and gathering information and being in relationship and being in our workspace, and everything can be just much more beautiful and complex when you have a level of awareness that gives you a level of discernment, right? It's not just taking it all. It's kind of like, interesting. Like, how does that sit with me? And a lot of what we teach, it's like, have you filtered it through you? Have you filtered that through you? I'm going to sit here with all my outrageous opinions, and I have many of them. We do. But it's like, I'm not telling you what to think. I might speak really passionately. I might even be relatively aggressive as I talk. But that's just because that's my passion from my experience being filtered through my knowing. How do you take information? And it's actually a really hard thing to listen to information from someone who's very convincing and sit in a space of discernment in our own minds, right? Like how instantly we are convinced of, oh, well, they've said it. Oh, yes. And then we kind of believe it first and then discern.
And we were trained that way,
right?
At school. Like that's what school trains you to do. You listen to the teacher says this is the correct answer.
Exactly.
We get righteous.
She's got the teacher's edition of the book. The answers are in the back.
I deal with this every day because I deal with some smart dudes who like this shit that they say. People are like, wow, I'm like dude, that doesn't make sense to me. I'll just call them out. Like, dude, it's fucking bullshit. Like, you get out. But if you think about it, like with school, what we're taught in this competitive environment, like to just compare, right?
Yeah.
And that's not good. And now all of a sudden, we love social media and everybody's comparing. And it's like, it's going to be detrimental to a lot of things, whether it's to because we're talking about awareness. A kid can't sit on their phone without turning it off for 5 or 6 seconds. It's like, it's unbelievable. So I think awareness is gonna have to catch you. I really think the meditations or any type of whatever. I told my little cousins, these are 17-year-old kids from Brooklyn. I was like, I couldn't call it meditation to them. I told them, get off your phone for the first hour of your day and just sit with your thoughts. And now all of a sudden they love it. Like, wow, what is this amazing thing? I'm like, it's fucking meditating, bro. Just you have to kind of change it up for certain things. Even like, I grew up in private Catholic school my whole life. You couldn't put a Bible near me. I hate it. I hate it to this day. Now I sit, I read it. I understand it because it's not being shoved down my throat. I understand it because it's not being taken literally. And my mother hates it because like, now you're reading the goddamn Bible. You would never go to church. I was like, Ma, So it's very cool. We're in a really interesting time. And I think people like ourselves are really going to lift some others up through this process. Because some people just, if you're not prepared for all this stuff, because I don't think the uncertainty is ending here. I think it's just going to get worse and worse for a little bit. And then, something will break and then something new will be created.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it is just that, we're like cheerleaders. Yes, I would say it's like cheerleaders for others, right? And cheerleader for our own journey. And then a cheerleader for someone else who's like, hey, can you kind of stand with me? Can you be my witness to the fact that I'm going through this? Because
can you tell me I'm not crazy?
Yeah, so often it's a shitstorm. It's really messy, looking at this stuff and unpacking, and it's not a comfortable process. And it's not all just rainbows and unicorns and positivity blanketing. It's actually more in line with the dark night of the soul. And then yes, through that, magic does actually happen, but it's really hard to explain that until someone's experienced it. And so it is being the cheerleaders of awareness.
And we got stuck in, well, it's very easy to get stuck in the shortening of everything down to a meme. And that one meme is going to solve someone's problems. That one little quote on an Instagram tile could actually be the thing that is enough sharing to get someone through something. And we need to realize that it takes long format conversations. It takes time. It takes coming back to the same thing. It takes the spiral, like, I feel like I healed that, but I'm back here again. And that sometimes we have, for a lot of this younger generation, we've shortened their attention span so much that they want this to change it. I've done that now. I'm going to go over here, not recognizing.
I refuse to go on TikTok. I'm not going on TikTok ever.
Yeah.
Everybody can find me. I'm not doing it. 10 seconds. What can I say in 10 seconds? Yeah. And I think, you see the numbers of podcasts keep getting higher and higher. And I'm not saying like Instagram will fall off the face of the planet, but eventually people are going to get sick of looking at girls' asses and the guy's muscles and this and that. And like, you're going to want to come around to see the truth, because eventually, like, maybe not even our lifetimes, 100 years from now, people are going to want what is reality? Like, what is going on? Because even being here during the, I didn't like Trump. I really didn't like Biden. Sitting in New York, going through this and hearing people like be so gun-ho for one or the other. I'm like, you guys are just shot. Like, you're crazy. Like, you're just out of your mind. And
it's almost like
yeah, it is. But that's what social media wants us to do. That's what Facebook ads want us to do. That's why the one way America would have been brought down was kind of splitting it up. And now I've never felt, it feels so divided here, and people are like so shot. It's just crazy. Like with the mask stuff, like I was not the biggest. I got shot. I had my shots. I'm boosted. God bless. But I looked at the data of the science, and I was like, the mask thing, if we're doing the social distancing, and I have the vaccination and I'm boosted, maybe I'm gonna wear a mask. So that's what I thought. And I get yelled at on the train, and people need something to have something to get really revved up about. It's really crazy.
I love that. We always say we don't wear masks either. And so, my face is a representation of freedom, and I think a lot of it's really interesting with this, of the perception, around stuff like that of, but you've got to do it for others. I'm like, but that would be enabling fear. I choose not to do that. Like, if you have an issue with me, then maybe that's something that you get to ponder and to feel, but it is divide and conquer. And it's it's working very successfully currently, and all of these things and what we choose to do. And the fact that, like John always says, you're never going to have a global population all agreeing to the same thing. And right now they're asking us all to do the same thing. I'm like, you're insane to think that would ever work. It doesn't work. And isn't the most magical thing in the world that we're all so different, and we see things differently, and we want to do things differently, and that's really beautiful. And that also comes through awareness. When you know yourself, when you're here, when you're aware, you know yourself, you know what your values and principles are. And there is a huge lack of people even having values and principles, of knowing who they are and aligning themselves with that, no matter how their external world changes. And for us, like, we're very strong in what our values and principles are, and also educate ourselves around that to know, and so that you can stand quite strong in what you choose to do. Like getting on the train without a mask, that shit's hard. We walk into the supermarket and it's like being death stared down, we're quite used to it after 2 years, but it's really, really intense to just be like, I've got to then regulate the system, which without the tools, the practices, the awareness, it's near to impossible to align with your own values. So an interesting terrain that we live on is having values and awareness that comes through, values and principles that comes through greater awareness, and you need tools to cultivate that. The sort of spiral is.
Exactly. And the only way you're not going to have, somebody's not going to disagree with you is if you don't say anything at all. So you have to learn how to speak. Like, that's the other thing this whole process did for me, was like, not going to the dark side or the dark side of the soul. That's just like understanding your dark